trying to like
Point to the little dots. Yeah, I have an intro, but it's not, I mean, it's not a funny one. It's not good, but looking at the news today, reading this section of the book and thinking this National Guard shooting could be our own Crystal Knocked for America. Want
Okay.
to start there?
is that but like in which direction? Like
In that using that to round up everyone that they want to
all the
harm and
National Guards,
kill?
arm round up all the National Guards, send them back where they came
No.
from. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, that would be funny. No,
A
absolutely
girl, a
not
girl, a
that
girl
part.
can dream.
So this is the 2 month review in which we take a giant book and break it down section by section, talk about it bit by bit. We are reading The Tunnel by William Gass, and today we're going to be talking about why windows are important to me, which goes from page 283 to 334. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and we have a special guest this week, Chris Villa from Leaf by Leaf. How are you doing, Chris?
Hey, great.
I'm
I'm doing well. It's great to be here. When you say we're talking about the section why windows are important to me, do you mean why windows are important to you, Chad, or Kohler, or
or
I just
whom?
wanted to clarify.
Yeah, to whom are windows important?
Yeah, never
I
thought about it before.
I never be there. And as always, joined by our two other co-hosts, Kaija Stramanis from Coffeehouse Press, Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox. How are you two doing today?
I'm doing great. I am not a Windows user. I'm as a student of the humanities, I have to have a Mac, otherwise I get kicked out. So I don't know what any of this is about.
That that
That
would
might
be a
be why
bit.
Kohler's so upset all the time. Maybe he's frustrated at using his Microsoft Windows instead of Apple.
One too many days with Clippy in your corner, and
Hmm.
you do get a little click in your head. That's all it
Start
takes.
writing by hand at that point. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this section, we can get into it in a second. It covers the Crystal Knock section, which is one of the parts of this book that I think a lot of people point to as like a high watermark in Gass's writing and in the novel as its own. Talks a little bit about his background and sort of like in terms of school, in terms of writing, in terms of like watching other people. But then with the Crystal Knock section, there's a little bit about his involvement theoretically. We learn a lot of things that are undercut in this section, such as Uncle Balt's non-existence.
God damn it.
Fun stuff. Good section to talk about. But before we get in there, Chris, I want you to talk about Leaf by Leaf for a bit because it's something that I think a lot of our listeners are familiar with, but not all of them. And it's something that's absolutely remarkable that you've done and put together over, I don't know how many years at this point. And is probably the one of the most important and longest running YouTube literary video, I don't know what you want to call it, video channels that I'm aware of, and has covered more books than anything that we could ever accomplish. So you explain what you're up to.
My goodness. Well, I refer to it as a sort of live stream of someone's uh, social disorder. So
Fair.
that's how you can refer to it. I've heard it called all kinds of things. Booktube, uh,
Yeah.
video essays, which I'm kind of fond of, but I don't in any way see these things constructed as an essay, either the way that Montaigne originally conceived or however it's morphed over time since then. But yeah, I mean, it honestly just it started in the summer of 2019. So little did I know what would happen in about 6 months to the entire world, which actually ended up being a boon for the channel. But yeah, in summer of 2019, I mean, honestly, this thing was born out of my coworkers. My day job is in IT, specifically in data and analytics, and now into AI and all that good stuff. But yeah, they just got tired of me constantly telling them about William Gaddis and Pynchon and all the way down the list, and they're like, look, man, we're never going to read these books. You're all, I'd try to rope them in by giving them enticing excerpts that I would read at lunch break and so on. And I mean, they just, yeah. So they said, you need to just go and talk about this stuff on YouTube. And I honestly, I was like, at that time, I didn't, even though I've been in tech and so on, I kind of missed the YouTube window. Uh,
Yeah.
and like it just never, those two things, like literature and YouTube, these are two different realms, right? And I just thought bizarre. And they're like, no, seriously. I mean, there's this whole demographic of people that when they want to learn about something or they're interested in something, they use YouTube the way that we use Google. They go there first and search for videos. And that was foreign to me. And they're like, just try it and see what happens. And sure enough, yeah, I started putting some things out there, and people started showing up and expressing interest, and then just hungry for more recommendations on where to find these books that aren't being talked about and aren't on the front tables of even independent bookstores. Mm-hmm. And it kind of took off from there. And then of course COVID, for all of its ills and very serious ills, one thing that did come out of it is people got really interested in reading books again, or for the first time ever. And so it just kind of hit right at the right point. And so yeah, I've just been kind of going on since then. It's been a lot of fun, but the most rewarding part is that people out there have introduced me to books that I hadn't heard about that ended up being just incredible, or views on just different ways of looking at books. Yeah, it's been incredible. It's been a great ride.
It is a remarkable thing that you're doing, in the sense that just simply structurally that you talk to the camera about these books for an extended period of time.
Yes.
We'll talk about the tunnel one in a second, but even like the Gravity's Rainbow one is it 3 hours?
It is 3 hours and 33 minutes and almost 33 seconds. I tried hard.
Would have been perfect. But the fact that you can do that you put that together, that it is entertaining, interesting, informative throughout, is remarkable. I mean, it's just a testament to like your ability. And they are like receiving thousands and thousands and thousands of views. When we went to share the one on the tunnel today, I noticed that you have like 45,000 subscribers, which for anything related to like high literature feels like you've way outkicked the coverage. Like there probably aren't I didn't think there were that many people who could read these sorts of books in America or in the world. And now we've got like, proof positive that there is that audience.
That's
so
definitely rewarding. Yeah.
So really, you think we brought you here to talk about the tunnel? We brought you here to tell us how to bring up our number.
How do we go from 40,
welcome to your TED Talk.
400?
Oh no. I cannot stress to you. I mean, seriously, I laugh about, I mean, I can't stress to you how lucky I am. Like, I'm just, because I don't do, like, I haven't paid for any packages or, dude, I get 5 emails a day from consulting firms wanting to give me a brand and boost me in the social sphere and, all these things. And I'm like, no, this is a passion project, not doing anything like that. And somehow, I don't know. I do think that the timing was key. Because that's when it took off, was everybody getting excited. And there was like this real excitement in a little community of people that were really pulling for each other. But I mean, honestly, I and it sounds like a false brag or something like that. Like, it's hard for me to talk about. Like, I feel so warm faced and squirmy right now because there's so much attention is being put on me. And I don't really like it. I'd rather talk about the book, but the channel has been so exciting. It is astonishing to me, honestly, that there are 45,000 subscribers. I don't know who they are. They're definitely not all watching the videos. I can tell you that right off. There's a very big discrepancy between views and subscribers. Let's get that clear. But people are, it is to say though, that the people are interested in great literature. Yeah, for sure.
I think one thing you said there, and then we can sort of back away from putting all the spotlight on you.
Yes.
It is that you want to talk about the book, and the book is primary, and the fact that it's a very honest, earnest, direct, book-centric, and not like bells, whistles, frills, self-congratulatory sort of production, that makes a big difference. I think that really does is part of the appeal, and part of the reason why there are so many subscribers, so many viewers, is that you don't feel like it's being like it's some kind of like big show and dance just to get you in and trick you. Yeah. It's something like sincere, and you read these books very carefully. You think about them. That comes through in every bit of it.
Good. Yeah, that is absolutely my primary motivation. I want these books mean so much to me, and I get so much out of them. Like I want other people to experience that. That's tangible. I honestly have. I don't know what I'd do if I tried to go towards the like brand and have a show and have like a tagline and all these things. I just don't. I honestly don't know how to do that stuff. Like it's not in me. It feels very. I could never be a salesperson. I do not know how to do that.
It is really well produced, though. I do have to tell you that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Like I have no idea how any of that works, but I can recognize that you put time and effort into it, and it's smooth. So, congrats on that.
Thank you.
The,
Please
the
let us move
tunnel,
on.
though, the tunnel project, which we want to talk about the tunnel, but one last bit that you did a 31-day
Yes.
visit with a reading of the tunnel, time with the tunnel over March of, is it last year? Yeah, last year, 2024. And it ends up being a 10-hour video that was broken up obviously into each day, but now you have the whole thing as one big giant video. Do you want to explain what that was to anyone who's listening? And then we can turn to the actual book.
Yeah, that started out with I wanted to prove to somebody that you could read the tunnel in 1 month.
Oh,
And
awesome.
the way that I came up with doing that for this particular person, they actually are much better at audiobooks, meaning they can do them. Versus myself, I don't know how to. I'm not an auditory learner.
Okay.
So if I put on a podcast or an audiobook, within 3 minutes, I'm gone. I'm gone. You put a book in front of me, I can sit for 8 hours and read like nonstop, no problem. So what I did was I thought to myself, okay, I'll read the book along with Gas's audio, right? And that will allow me to understand how to divide this thing up for the audiobook in 31 days. And I'll just do the reading accordingly. So that's kind of how that started. But then I thought, well, what if I kept a journal, and at the end of each day, I'll just write out everything I can think of that I got out of that day's reading. And so then what the video ends up being is me reading back my journal that I kept. So it was funny because when I first posted, a lot of people thought it was my audiobook of the tunnel.
Could be wild.
They saw the time and they're like, oh, Chris reads the tunnel. Is it what was getting disseminated everywhere? I was like, no. But yeah, so that's kind of, I thought, well, it's kind of interesting too, because here I sat for a month listening to Gas read his book to me. And then my video is me reading my book. I'm doing quotes here, book, to whoever watches it. So it ended up being a neat paradigm. And it gave me a lot to think about because I was reading the words on the page while also listening to Gas. And it's really a treat to listen to him read this book.
Absolutely.
And there are some really interesting discrepancies between sometimes what he'll speak versus what's written, including one that's in this section.
Oh,
where he says edge instead of age, and it makes for a nice talking about Mad Meg Tabor's chair that Gas had shipped from Germany. So little things like that, are fun avenues for thought. But anyway, it gave me those two dimensions, and then really sitting down and thinking about everything I had read and how it was connecting to everything else and writing it out. But then the process of making the video and going back and rereading everything I had written, then more thoughts are coming because it's an endless book. Like no one will never get to the end of talking about it. There's just too much to offer. So that was really rewarding. And that was the whole motivation. So it started out, like I said, as proving to someone that you can read it in a month if you're dedicated, and using the audiobook and the page counts per MP3 track to divide that across 31 days. And so I actually had like a reading plan. And so in the video too, you'll see how I broke it down and the page ranges for each day.
Yep.
And it starts heavy. So there's more reading in the first 15 days and then a lot less reading in the next 15 days as it gets, because, it accumulates. So there you go.
Very much. Very cool.
See, I did mine in February. I got it all screwed up. That's what I did wrong. Damn.
It wasn't a leap year, I don't believe.
You need those extra 3 days.
Yeah. Valentine's Day is not a great holiday for this one.
Good point. So getting into this section, just general thoughts. Brian, what did you think of this part? We've been off for a week, so it was like interesting to me to come back to and to fall back into this, like, oh yeah, this is that voice where this person hates a lot of things.
I think my initial reaction was I thought it falls perfectly in line with stuff we've been discussing before about how everything is layered with multiple meanings and multiple ways of thinking about something or talking about something. And this idea of windows allowing us to be separate from something, allowing us to be voyeuristic. There's a lot of voyeurism in here, and then topping this off with broken glass at the end of it. So it's a very it's heavy, it's layered. It's par for the course for what this book has been so far. was my take on it. Yeah.
And another defenestration book, in a sense.
There you go.
Vineland.
There you go.
Vineland.
Back to Vineland. Sure.
In a way, although very, very, very different. Kaija, what were your big impressions? I know you didn't quite get to the end, but you got through 99% of it. So
Yeah, I was ready to just call it this the second he announced that Uncle Bolt was manufactured, and I was just like, fuck this, I'm done. If I'm not here for Uncle Bolt stories, then I don't know what I'm doing here. And the second thing I want to say is that I had a way different study abroad experience in Germany than Taylor did. So that was also different. But yeah, I'm in a place now with the book where a lot of my notes are kind of calling back or referencing other things that I've read in like the last 15, 20 years. For example, one of the recent notes, like Gudberger Bergson, who's an Icelandic author, that Open Letter published Thomas Janssen bestseller, where hitting this point where Kohler is like just telling you this history, and then in the very like almost the very next paragraph, he's like, "Oh yeah, then my buddies and I went out. We're throwing bricks through Jew windows." Like you forget in this storytelling that you are hearing this from a truly despicable human being.
And I'm a little offended that Chad said he wanted to choose Annie Lennox walking on broken glass for the intro music this week.
I mean,
what's up with that? I mean, it seems just a little tonally that seems a little off for the material that we're dealing with today. But
I just asked AI.
It's a great song, Chad. I agree. It's a great song. I love Annie Lennox, but it's kind of upbeat.
I mean,
a little happy.
That's fair. I will give Grok that feedback.
Grok chose it.
Just go on Twitter. I'm like, yo, Grok, what fits best with this tunnel? And then I get some weird Nazi shit. And all of a sudden, like, Nick Fuentes is up in my DMs, and things get a little bit strange over there.
I would choose the catalog of KMFDM or Annie Lennox walking on broken glass. Let's do the latter.
And just real quick tidbit, because Chad brought up defenstration. That does come from the German word for window, Fenster.
Oh, all right, I didn't know that.
So there you go, full circle.
There you go. Dude, look at you, German learning.
Yeah. Things, those are the things I picked up abroad, but
true. Chris, what do you think of this section? I mean, you've been through the book several times, or at least twice, if not more. How many times have you read it?
I don't. I think that one last year, that was my third time.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, third time through.
Good Lord, what's wrong with you?
I don't. Yeah, exactly. This book, and honestly, I was thinking about this, and I kind of alluded to it in my series of emails yesterday. But like, I feel like this is a book. Like, you can't really read this book. You can only fail to read this book. I feel like that so much of it is failure. I mean, the whole reason we have this book, the whole ruse, is that Kohler's failing to write the introduction,
Yeah.
and so everything we're reading is born out of a failure, uh, and then is about failure. And in the same way, it's like every time I think I feel like I failed to read this book, but I failed really well. So I don't know what it is we do, but we do something when we get through this book or survive this book or whatever. Uh, we haven't read it, but we've done something else, and I think that whatever that something else is, and I try to get at that in my journal. I kept hitting on something that was like jostling loose, and can't quite articulate it yet, but we achieve something when we take this book seriously and really try to grapple with it. But it's something different than what we mean when we talk about reading a book. But anyway, my favorite section or subsection within this Philippic is the blackboard section.
That's really cool too. Yes.
Yeah, I reread this last night. I reread this section last night, and I quickly remembered how long it takes because I thought, oh yeah, I'll quickly read through this in preparation for tomorrow. No, there's no quickly reading through one page in this book, which I really appreciate because you can't just one doesn't just achieve this overnight. And of course, everyone knows that this took, as long as it takes most of us to pay off a mortgage and all this thing to actually write. But yeah, I started getting in there, and then the blackboard section, I thought, okay, here's my favorite section. And once again, every time I enter into this thing, uh, this is where you get to see all three sides of who Gass was, because Gass was this remarkable person who taught philosophy. Mm-hmm. And he liked to specify that he was not a philosopher and did not engage in doing philosophy, but he taught philosophy, which means that he's a great reader and could read and understand philosophers, especially some of the more opaque German ones. But you really see in the blackboard section, Gass the philosopher, Gass the poet, especially the poet who was completely captivated by Rilke, and Gass the essayist. And this is why I love his essays in general. Yeah. But you get all three sides that made Gass such a remarkable person and thinker in the blackboard section. And it's sort of, I like it too, because it's a good section to give people who are leery of this despicable character of Kohler, because it's this one section that happens to be devoid of all the stuff that we're referring to when we talk about the despicable side. It's like talking about the blackboard for a moment. He's in touch with something that takes him out of his misery. And he's just going into this metaphysics of chalk dust carrying the imprint of what was originally written on the slate of blackboard, and if only it can make its way to a human mind that can think it back into existence, this is what makes history, and you're like, what? But then you continue to read it and you realize he's conflating all these different things that he's picked up. He's reaching into the law of the conservation of math, that no matter can ever be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. Right. He's digging into the first, I can't remember if it's first or second law of thermodynamics. He's digging into Lucretius, and specifically the concept of the Kleinamen for how we have free will And all these things are wrapped up in there and delivered though with this poetry that's like, I mean, it's breathtaking. Some of the passages in Blackboard. So I know everybody, yeah, the Kristallnacht is of course like this is like the capstone on
Yeah.
this Philippic.
Yeah.
But for me, and everything you guys have mentioned, the because that becomes another window, and this concept of windows when you're looking through them, having the faint imprint of your own face on them.
Yeah.
And he talks about that, and then again he talks about when he was called out by his elementary school teacher or whatever for having plagiarized an essay on books. And he
Hmm.
says something about books are a deck of windows, and when we're reading them we see the faint imprint of our own self in front of them. And then again that concept of the imprint in the chalk dust. And what I like about that is this concept of windows and defenestration, but the fact that when it comes to perception, reading, engaging in voyeuristic behavior, your own imprint, it's a way of saying that you're always in the way of your perceptions of what's out there. You cannot get out of your own way. That you imprint yourself on every book you read, every window you look through. That is to say, everything you look at. And the way he uses those three different things, the windows, the chalk, and the books, the essay on books, to connect those, that's probably my kind of what snagged me the most again and again.
You have raised the intellectual level of this podcast significantly in the past like X number of minutes. As a whole, you are the ship that has raised our boats, or whatever that phrase
Well,
is.
Oh,
again, I think it's really cool to think about too. All of these things are different. They're just like a different form of the same thing. It's just
Mhm.
rocks.
mm,
Chalk is a soft rock. Slate is a harder stone. Glass is just stone that's been cooked, right? They're all, and they can all accomplish a similar thing. There's this great quote. I don't know it exactly, but it's by George Orwell, and he talks about writing like a pane of glass. And the point of good writing is that you don't even notice it, and you look through the window on the other side. Now, when you fuck up as a writer, you put smudges on the glass, and you start noticing that, then the world on the other side.
Yes.
And it's very similar to what I was saying, like when you see yourself in the glass, a mirror, right? The window becomes a mirror. And so like it's just another way of like showing like these layered, like, good lord, he takes like
yeah.
something symbolic and just layers the hell out of it. Like it's incredible. It's an incredible thing to wrestle with reading this book.
And the blackboard as a tunnel,
Yeah.
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
like theoretically, and like that representation, a big black square or black
And like we say, and we capstone this with rocks being thrown through windows.
rocks through
There we
windows,
go.
like all the
Yeah.
rocks.
It's yeah.
My experience reading this particular section and going back into it was very similar to, if you're watching this on YouTube, to your background, Chris, was like that sort of multinodal experience was what I was having, which ties into what you're saying. We're like, and what you're saying, Brian, we're like one mention, the blackboard all of a sudden is like 19
Yeah.
different representations, ways to think about it. Same thing with what you said, Kaya, where it's like all these things are happening at once, and you can pick out one thread and pursue that, or think of it in one way, but you feel like there's all these other ones that are also there, and you can go in those directions. So, like you say, it is endless. There
It
is,
feels very different than other postmodern works, though, because I find like sometimes when I'm reading postmodernist stuff, it just feels it's almost like they're fungal spores.
Hmm.
It's rhizomic stuff, just
Yeah.
kind of pops up here, there, whatever, and like my job is to try to make sense of it, maybe,
Hmm.
or is there sense to it? Whereas like I don't feel that way with this.
Yeah.
it's interesting. The other thing, when you're talking about the description of that, and like the seeing through windows, seeing through the blackboard, seeing your reflection stuff, is that it feels very Kantian to me. Like it's maybe my own personal like sort of self-obsession with the idea that you can't you can't ever get outside of yourself and outside of your senses or outside of where you are. So everything that you look at is that self-reflection, and it is a little glimpse, a little window out of where you are. So even like one of the examples of like your eyes can only see a certain band of what's available vision wise. So you're only seeing like a fraction, a window, a peek at what the reality is beyond us. And you're trapped within there. So you're stuck with yourself. And like it's clear like Kohler's not, he's not a good person. And that's reflected back at him over and over and over again. And he doesn't shy away from it in here, which is one of those like it's the engine behind the book, but it's also like one of the main points where if you take anything away from it, in some sense, it's that I can see these party of disappointed people everywhere. Like I didn't see them in myself, and they pop up, and like their actions, like what happens out of that is the can be a catalyst, can be squashed down, can
Yep.
be imagined. Like where does that energy go? And it's very, I find, yeah, it's super layered, like you guys say, and it is just so wedded together.
Do you guys do you guys think though that like hearing that he was in this cloistered in this academic environment for the large majority of his professional life, right? He's is what it sounds like to me. I don't know his history. Everything feels like it's like shots fired at American academia.
there is definitely some of that.
No,
Yeah,
because like
for sure.
everything is like you're so smart, you're sitting around, you're looking out the window, but you're not engaged with the world. Like you have no clue what is really like. Are you on the other side of this window because you just like to look? Or is it confinement? Like it keeps like you know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah.
look at the freedom of looking out at this window, and it's like, or no, no, are you hiding behind the window? Like what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Like
And like,
which side is the escape on? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that Gas was pretty much in academia his entire life.
entire life. Okay.
Yeah, and but the funny thing is the contrast between Kohler and Gas. Uh, from all accounts that we have, his students loved him. His colleagues loved him. He poured himself out to create a center for research at the University of Washington. Just really went above and beyond for the humanities and for his students. Just a really warm, likable guy. But
100%.
for sure, who could be in academia their entire lives and not find some things to gripe about from time to time. And and for sure there is that. So it's interesting, the contrast, because he got a lot of the early criticism of, because pieces of the tunnel came out as it was being written, I think starting as early as 70s, early 70s.
That's right.
Yeah, maybe late 60s. I think early 70s.
I think
So critics jumped right on it and equated Gas with Kohler.
yes.
And
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. And
Jeez.
Gas, especially early on, he really found a persona that he had, that I think he had a lot of fun with, to put on this persona of sort of the bad boy of academia and the bad boy of literature. And I'm going to write stuff that digs into just anger and spite and bitterness and cruelty, but I'm going to write it in the most beautiful language I can possibly muster. But then, it was like a total, like this dark side of his imagination that wasn't part of his outward character. So it is interesting in that way. One thing I wanted to say really quickly while I'm thinking about it is you were talking about how it's like a disconnected rhizome with these spores here and there, or not the tunnel, but a lot of postmodern stuff. And for sure, I get that, and that is something that's distinct about the tunnel. I think another book that's the same way right now, I'm reading Don DeLillo's Underworld again, and I'm just struck by how tightly structured and connected everything in that book is. It's similar to the tunnel, where if he introduces something, he's going to have exhausted every connection he can come up with to tie that to other things by the end of the book. And it's kind of like my background here. This is
Yeah.
actually a graph database, is what this represents. This comes from the mathematician Leonard Euler towards the late 18th century in Königsberg, in then Prussia. There are like these two islands in the middle of the river, and there were a total of like seven bridges. So in mathematics, it's called the seven bridges of Königsberg problem. Anyway, this mathematician Euler, he pretty much spearheaded and defined the mathematics of topology and graph theory, where he described things in terms of nodes and edges. So all these little boop, boop, boop things are nodes, and all the lines are edges. And so I think another way of saying this is, a lot of some of this postmodern stuff, you just get the nodes, but you're not getting the edges, which represent the relationships between the nodes. And what you get in something like the tunnel or underworld is so much attention to the edges or the relationships, vertices, connections, more than just introducing nodes. And I do think that's key, because that is for sure where something like the tunnel comes in and stands out, kind of shoulders other stuff out of the way, is when there's that attention to structure, architecture is
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like that. There was kind of a moment back in the early 2000s where there was a lot of talk among like more academic literary theorists or critics, or but also writers, about the architecture of stuff, because hypertext was becoming a thing. The
Yeah.
idea of like how you could create nodes and create connections between stuff that would allow, in a postmodern way, the reader to have more agency, right? And that was always one of the pieces of postmodernism, is that instead of telling everyone X, Y, Z, you follow this, here's the moral pathway that you take through this story that I'm going to manipulate you into learning through and to acting through, that you throw things out in ways that are non-judgmental and allow the reader to like then have to piece it together, because it will be it's their agency, it's their power to make the text, that they are now
Mhm.
actively engaged, like the old like hopscotch, to some degree,
Yeah.
but also If on a
Yeah.
Winter's Night a Traveler really like
Yep.
explicitly says that, although some of these others like acted it out. And there was like Richard Powers talked about that a lot. I think
Mhm.
there's an essay, which maybe I can find and post on the Man the Delkey Archive Substack, that he wrote about that, about like the architecture of novels and the way of thinking about it. And I think that's really important to gas, and to like most of the novels I really like and that you talk about tend to have that angle. I use
Yep.
structure, but also architecture is maybe a more sophisticated way to, or maybe more visual way for people to understand what
Hmm.
you're talking about when you talk about structure. Like, how is it built?
For sure.
One other thing related to that, I don't want to get too far off, but like with the edges and the nodes, the other thing is like, and what you said, Brian, about like writers that have like the smudge on the glass, that's what, for editing translations, that's kind of the metaphor that I've always used, although not said that way, of like the second you get taken out of the text, you're done. You have to not be taken out. So a good translation doesn't call attention to necessarily the fact that it's like translated. Sometimes they do, and that's fine. But the idea of like, oh, you're reading along, and then you're like, what the fuck is this? Like
Oh,
this doesn't work.
gotcha. You're part of John Gardner's fictional dream. You hate.
Yeah,
I know. I know you just. I know you disagree with some of his teaching, but there it is. It's breaking the dream, the
breaking the
fictional
dream,
dream, cinematic realism.
taking you out of it. But it's there, and like I think
Yeah.
that like with lesser writing, the nodes become so overriding. Like it's the metaphor becomes like there's so many metaphors in here which are talking about the windows, blackboard, tunnel, and you can take them in all these ways, and they are throughout. They're laced throughout. But with bad writing, it ends up being like that's the focal point. And it's just beating you to death with like, here is my one idea, here is my vision. And this doesn't really do that. Even though there's a lot of pieces like that, there's something about that connective tissue in the way that it's like naturalized, that is like so clearly a step above what you would get from like an MFA, thesis or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's really impressive. And I like the idea of the nodes and the edges. I think that makes a lot of sense for looking at this. You're muted, or somehow you're not coming through. Uh-oh. Minor technical difficulty.
Testing.
There we go.
All
You're back.
right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I was going to say if we could go back to, I don't mean to take control of this, but
Please do.
I was
Drive the
just say we
car.
can go back to what Kaija said about Uncle Bolt, the big reveal of Uncle Bolt, and maybe talk about why. Because I had the same experience, and I do every time. Because it's just such a well wrought character. Like
Yes.
you're thinking, how could this character not have been real? And then you realize, wait, this whole thing is a book. What's happening to my brain?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it, we've talked about the reliability of Kohler as the narrator and this, and and just Chris, you saying that now, like I realize the attachment that I formed as a reader from just that one section that featured Uncle Balt, and then we're like two, three sections after that, and to just be hit with that, like, well, if he had been real, it's like this is like second to the Library of Alexandria for me, guys. Like this
Yeah.
are the things that are gonna keep me awake at night now.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's just such a it's of course it's a testament to the power of Gass's writing. Like if there's any question whether he can develop a character or not, just hand somebody Uncle Bolt and the visceral reaction to the big reveal. And the funny thing is how nonchalantly it is revealed.
Yeah.
Just like a little like, oh yeah, if he, like you said, oh, if he had been real, then blah blah blah. And I do like that because you get to where you're questioning everything in this book. Yeah, unreliable narrator. The whole thing with Lou, you've got to wonder, is this just his extension of Lou Salome and her flings with Nietzsche and Freud and all this? Was there really a Lou for him? And you start to question, but I do like how I feel like this was deliberate. But the big reveal about Uncle Bolt's fictionality, as if we didn't realize he was a fiction, is confirmed by an objective party, that is Martha, because they start looking through the photo albums.
Yes.
And she's like, and she steps in and says, who are you talking about? Like, no one's heard of this person, and then the picture's not in the photo album. I felt like that was a deliberate thing on Gass's part to, here I am talking like these people weren't all on Gass's part, but you see what I'm saying? Like, I felt like that was intentional, like, so that we wouldn't question that. He's like, okay, let me get this sort of objective party to come in. But there's a lot of that because I don't know how you all feel, but you kind of forget it's a novel.
Yeah.
And you think this is just a really angry memoir. Yeah.
Confession.
I keep forgetting this is the introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. The introduction.
The book's already written.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions on where is it? 290. Like, is that the table of contents to his book? Or like the structure of his Guilt and Innocence in Hitler's Germany? Like, it feels like it could be. Like this list of the spread of the pox, Schreier's Mein Kampf, racism as a Hebrew notion, political motives of the Emancipation Proclamation. Like, it feels like it could be like the guide to like
for sure
this other book that we are not witnessing.
They're at the very least notes. Yeah.
Fascinating remarks by Mr. Rosenberg.
Yeah.
Salome's not sleeping with Nietzsche, not sleeping with Freud either. Which then pops up there. But then but with the Balt thing, the other thing that it does is then undercut, like, is the Kristallnacht stuff real? So like in that section, he's like living in Germany, studying with Tabor, looking out his window into like who he refers to as like the Turk, this apartment across the way in which he half sees this guy like from behind naked, starts inventing all these stories about him, wondering if he's circumcised. And then this leads into like him going in the streets as Kristallnacht happens after Greenspan murders, is it Von Dolp? Did you say? I forget what is the
Von Roth.
Yeah. And that kicks off the reason for the Nazi party to be like, fuck all Jews. We have to kill them. Like that's where I was sort of alluding to the beginning of like, our terrifying and terrible government being like, we're getting rid of every Somali out of this country now because of like, and using this one killing as like the
Mm.
premise for that.
Mhm.
What I really got stuck on here, because and kind of knows way too much about this, but like I do listen to, and I've mentioned it here many times, listen to a podcast, Knowledge Fight, about the right wing media space as a criticism of it, and very funny criticism of it. But the idea that this was a false flag operation popping up in like 1930, 30 whatever, I was like, oh shit, this
Great.
stuff has been
Yeah.
around forever.
Oh
This
yeah.
concept of like using this event, constructing an event to allow you to then do what you really wanted to do and to create a justification for it.
Well, not just an event; it's an assassination
Assassination.
Sure.
because it worked. It worked well the last time,
There you go.
right?
Yep.
So let's use another assassination and
There
see
you
what
go.
powder keg that could be for us.
Yeah.
We can quote Kohler himself. Welcome to history, to
Yeah.
cause and fate, power and purpose, to the country of the clever calculation and the con. Welcome to conspiracy and criminal connivance, the world of rig.
Which is perfect. Which also reminded me of Ed Park's book, Same Bed,
Ah, yeah.
Different Dreams, with all those
Yeah.
references to the various assassinations and
Hmm.
the political motives behind them. But yeah, so that, but we were saying with the Bolt thing is it does then call into question, is that Crystal Knox section real? Is that like a fantasy of his to have been part of that? Is that like him imagining that's how, what I would have done
Mhm.
under those
Yeah, because
circumstances?
I mean, I think it was either at the end of the last section or at the beginning of this section where he does say, like the first time he talks about throwing the brick or the rock, I think he refers to it as a rock, and he says something like he throws it, but he throws it through an already broken window, so he like technically took part but didn't actually break anything. And then at the end of this section, he throws it through a grocer's window and then retrieves it. Um, but
Yeah, it's
I
like shooting a boat a second time. It doesn't count the second time. We already hit it once.
Yeah.
No, but we also have the potential parallel of um Greenspan taking the 5 shots, like,
Mm.
only one of them hits, like
Yeah.
which, is that in any way related to his retelling of throwing this brick? But that's one thing I was going to ask you all is, are we looking at Kohler being in Germany 2 separate times? Because it sounds like the 1938 Kristall, like the Kristallnacht, he was there. That's when he was a student. But then this later one where he's talking about like peeping through this window across the way, and he's like, well, why would this like little kid, paint a swastika? Like we're past that point. We're not there anymore. And so to me, it made it sound like the peeping through across the way was a later period in Germany.
I
But
From the start, I always have questions about the veracity of the dates and the ages.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
Kohler's like age seems fucked up somehow, and I can't quite pin down why it feels fucked up, but like he would be 18 and 38 if you're like studying abroad in that way, which puts him born in 1920, which I don't know if that entirely matches with the earlier stuff about his childhood. But
Yeah.
then again, the stuff about his childhood is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing about Uncle Bolton living with him and like that whole story is bullshit. So
This is a great place to like have that reveal though when you think about it, because now that we're like the section before we were talking about the relationship of mother and father,
yeah.
right, and then the relationship of this larger than life academic that he can look up to as well, right? And it's almost like these are things that are filling in things that are missing for Kohler. And so, like, what is Uncle Bolt? He is everything Kohler isn't, right? Kohler's a voyeur.
Yeah.
Bolt is like action. Kohler's trapped. Bolt is free. He's uncontained, right? Like unashamed or like full of shame or unashamed. And so to have this cracked and broken in this section that's all about windows or or mirrors, it's another thing. Like this is a perfect like opportune time to, as annoying as it is, like this makes so much sense. Like this would be the place to have that take place.
And to
Yeah.
puncture the idea of fiction as reality, to shatter that too.
Yeah,
So
and like Kai is saying, and now it really questions into reality what history is real, what history is not, and you're the one writing the history book. Oh, geez, what a mess we're in.
if he's following, if he's, I tend to really enjoy Mad Meg's huge diatribe about history. Essentially, in my own words, history is whoever shouts what it is the loudest and the
Yep.
most compellingly,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
Yep.
So now Kohler, who has been under that tutelage, is now on his own, and in a way, it seems like this book becomes, him rewriting history by coming up with the most memorable way in which he can put it down. This whole book is him shouting what the history of his life is, in a compelling way that will stick with us. And yeah, now I'm sitting here questioning, because there is the braiding and overlapping superimpositions of different time periods, and being in Germany as a student, but then again as a researcher,
Mhm.
and when things happened. um these aren't as I think he says, it becomes to where dates and events, or what should I say, like dates the precise factual
Mhm.
pieces that make up history, dates and names of wars and things like that. um this isn't what's important, and this isn't what people are going to remember. What they're going to remember is the way in which it's told,
Yeah.
and that's what becomes important in this book. The language makes the history. The world is words.
Yep.
Mhm.
The secretary creates the reality,
Yeah.
and,
Oh, I like
and
that.
like the Stalin way of looking at things,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, that you get to draft it. And like, I mean, it's like 1984 too, right? Like, we've always been at war with Oceania or whatever, and you just can change it. And as long as it's
Yeah.
believable. I had like, as you were talking about the Balt thing, it reminded me of this old argument that I had where I really wanted to write something long about this. I'm not smart enough to do that, but about like what strikes us as believable. Because someone was talking about a episode of This American Life where they're like, clearly like nature matters more than nurture. Because on This American Life, they had this story about these two kids that were switched in the hospital, and they were raised by two very different families, and they never fit in, and then they found their family and they fit in perfectly, and they're like, that is like evidence. And I was like, that's like a fucking story. That's like what you would write in like an MFA story. It's like so trite and contrived and like simple and like makes your point. That doesn't feel real. That
Yeah.
feels fake to me. And like then it started questioning like what,
Oh, was that was Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, I believe,
It's the parent
right? Right.
trap.
I
trading
know that one.
spaces. Yep, yep, yep. But yeah, it's like that Uncle Balt's thing is so perfectly told. It's so convincing. It's so much its own standalone vignette. It works so well.
Yeah.
And it also is like convincing as to like maybe what Kohler needs. Like some of this is him inventing what he needed. Like what you're saying, Brian, about the parents and the
He's
relationship.
not like Uncle Bolt's not a man. He's a wish.
He's a
Yeah.
wish. And he
Yeah.
also does things that Kohler never does. Like he is the opposite, like you say, but he also is outspoken. He talks about like not being pissed at all the women yippery yappening or whatever phrase he uses all the time. Whereas Kohler sort of represses all of that
Yeah.
and comes
Mhm.
out through him like digging a hole or digging
Yeah.
a tunnel, writing this and hiding it. He's always
Mm.
hiding these things that he's saying very, very honestly on the one hand, and at the same time, like absolutely obfuscating, lying, changing.
Yeah.
Maybe, in some sense, we've read it or brought this up as like Kristallnacht maybe doesn't, maybe he's not part of it. It could be the opposite, that maybe he's way fucking worse, and that this is toning down to some degree, like how active he would have been in other circumstances. Because we're still getting his version, and he doesn't seem to be like glossing over or
Mm.
like rubbing out those edges, but I don't know. I
Well,
don't
if
know.
you just go back to the title of Guilt and Innocence, right? Like
Yeah.
it almost feels like trying to explain away your participation in something vile and evil and disgusting that you're not sure how to come to terms with.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if Gas is saying, like, again, like this is in like you reader, it may not be like Nazi Germany, but like you're involved and you are a participant of awful, terrible things.
Hmm.
Do you really want to think about it, or would you prefer to?
I was just voting, man. Yeah, like
Yeah,
it really
yeah.
is. Like you wonder, like years from
I
now,
think
like are these MAGA people going to have some sort of come to Jesus moment, similar in some ways,
Just
influence
any person,
like any person, but
just any person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually it is a pretty scary book, and it's sad, but it's also sort of telling, sort of the way it was received, and the way it's just kind of stayed hidden, uh, in its own way. It never. I feel like this book never can quite get in there like some other books have.
mm,
Uh, and I do think a lot of it. I mean, obviously, on the surface, a lot of people don't want to read, uh, from and about this guy, because it is just a horrible, horrible person, and a lot of it is just like, ugh. But I think it does really cause, if you really read it and really let it challenge you, uh, and its whole idea of the fascism of the heart.
yeah,
Uh, it's getting at the seeds of. Kohler is a little farther along than a lot of us. He has soiled those seeds, if you will. And, I think Gaz is trying to show us that those seeds are in all of us.
yeah.
Hmm.
And all it takes is a certain amount of stand under someone's thumb, or as he talks about in this section that we're talking about, he gets into, there's nothing like, when you realize that the reason you can't have something is because someone else is doing something to take it from you. And that, when you start down that path, that's when those seeds of the fascism of the heart, start to get watered, right?
Yes.
And
Yep.
so there's something in this book that, like, it does, like Brian said, it challenges. It doesn't matter who you are. It will challenge you, because we're born into a culture that we just absorb a lot of just terrible stuff and terrible history, and it's something we need to all reckon with, at a level, that sometimes for some of us it takes such potent writing like this to make us face it for ourselves. um, and that scares a lot of people, you know.
It's interesting because then, like, because you say that too, where people are afraid of this book. It is daunting. It's, the first 50 to 100 pages are really off-putting, I think, from a literary standpoint. Like, there's the personal relationship to the character aspect to it, but there's also like, I don't know where I am. Like, this
Yeah,
is very overwhelming in some sense, and it
yeah.
does put people off like that. And yet, like, what are we reading when we read it, which you brought up earlier? And like, what does that mean? Strikes me as you're saying this, the big difference between like if you bring up things like critical race theory or like relationships to like affirmative action, people's reactions are to that concept that they've not read. And if you were to tell someone on the street, like you've got a bit of fascism in you, you're following these things, they probably are going to react poorly. If you read
Yeah.
this book, that becomes much different. Like your reaction to that becomes much more nuanced, becomes much more self-aware. There is like
Mhm.
a sort of learning, a sort of morality to it, to go back to the John Gardner and Richard Ford side of things. But there is something about that awareness of the self that like makes it more palatable, or at least like the idea is more makes more sense to people. So like maybe everyone should read The Tunnel, and then they can it should be super popular so that then they can reckon with their own horrors, and maybe the world becomes a better place. It's not going to become a better place. Entropy always wins. Everything sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
They're always, whatever. We have to pay for data resource now, and my
Yeah.
bills for electricity went up 30%. Like
No,
things are,
but it feels like it's kind of circling and orbiting. Like you were saying, Kant earlier. Did you say Kant or Kant? I couldn't tell because you were talking about yourself, and so I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure which one you were going
if
with.
if I were
But
British, it would be the latter.
sure. But
yeah.
then you think of like those like heavy, like monstrous, like holy crap, like the the mind of like Nietzsche when you try to read that stuff, how like just thick and dense that is, or like shadow work with like Jungian psychology. Like you can't help but start thinking about these things as you're seeing this person in this basement, this
That's
dark
I love that
basement
you
wrestling.
I love that you touched on that right there, Jungian shadow theory, because one of the things that never left me when I first read about it in that area uh, was I had a professor who pointed out. They said, "Have you ever just known someone who does something that just irks you for some reason? Like it just gets under your skin." And of course, went around, got some examples, and they said, take a moment to think about how you might do the exact same thing. And what they led up to was oftentimes, and I've seen this over and over ever since, but oftentimes the things that irk us the most about other people is it's because they're reflecting something we don't like about ourselves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you think about that in terms of facing this Kohler fellow in reading this, uh, that can be that's kind of the root of that challenge. It's like if you find this book getting under your skin or something being very disturbing or off-putting, like allowing, like challenging yourself to figure out why that bothers you so much, especially when this is a fictional character. Obviously
Yeah.
it's mirroring things we've encountered in real life, but digging into that, like why is this disturbing me so deeply? And that I think is the type of stuff that people by and large don't want to go there.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Mm.
I mean, that will drive a whole industry of psychology for many, many, many decades, is
Yeah.
having to face that part. The Jungian anima animus thing is something that I wanted to try and map onto this at some point in time, of like the projection of like your, for a male, your female self onto other women and onto relationships. There's something there that hasn't been fully tracked with both Lou and Susu and with Martha, as being like his inner reflection of what those relationships would be like, and what of the female characters act as. Like they do, like you say the thing with Lou, like we sort of like in here sort of settled on Lou seemed like real. But there isn't any proof for it. And it is very much a fantasy sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
A young girl in love with this like, fat professor, is like willing to do whatever. They go live at the Finger Lakes for a
Yeah.
month and fuck all the time, and it's wonderful. And even the breakup, like you said, Kai, didn't seem real, as if it's like so glossy and hallmarky.
Oh
Like
yeah. Yeah.
there's a little bit of that, of like that's the person that he wants. That's the person that he desires to exist. And like you just make someone fit that mold to some degree.
Which in this section he's talking about licking honey out of her belly button, which no woman in her right mind.
You're,
That is a cleanup that is like the worst cleanup situation
you're gonna
of
get
any.
flies stuck
Whether
in
it's
there.
on your skin, whether it's on the kitchen counter, you literally and metaphorically don't fuck with honey, guys.
That's probably a scene from the animated show Archer. This is why we have ants.
This is why
Yeah,
we
this,
have
this
it.
is exactly why
Yeah.
we have Anne.
Yeah.
So I'm on board with Lou being fake now because that was super
That was
unrealistic.
the tell.
That was it.
That
Yep.
was it.
Yep.
Honey in the bit, no way.
Nope, not gonna
Nope.
happen. So anyways, so we should probably wrap up here, but does anyone have a favorite line that you'd like to share?
Oh.
Who wants to go first? I had one open that actually
I'll
ties
go
into
for.
something we've asked that we talked about earlier, but I think it works here too, is on 311. Three spaces matter in my life. They are my trinity: the pane of the window, the white of the page, and the black of the board. I would like to have said the body of my beloved, but I can't.
Well, that's the one I had, so
Oh,
I'll
damn
pass
it.
now.
Well, Brian can look for another one. I was worried that Chris took mine, but I did a check. There are like five parts that start with "Welcome to History," and what you said was
Mm.
not the one that I had marked. But I had on the top of 329, "Welcome to history, to personality and pleasure, immediate motives and margins of profit, to the stealthy operations of the human ego, to vice as the honest and homely vector of events."
Mm.
Real quick, this is a side note, but I just wanted to point out on my 329, which I think our pages are starting to shift here, but my
Yeah.
329 has them where he says, "My German would always sound as if it had been taught to me by immigrants, at least a generation away from native, as indeed it had been," which is something you mentioned, Kaya, in relation to Gass's pronunciation of German in the audiobook, which then does
Yes.
match on to Kohler here as being not a native German speaker, but having learned it in like this secondary steps away way.
Which I am relieved to believe that that is truly a bit because it's hard to listen to. And Chris, you've listened to the audiobook as
Yeah.
well. It's rough. It's rough going.
Luckily, I don't have a trained ear for proper German pronunciation, so it doesn't grate me as much. But
90% of the German I've heard is in World War II Nazi movies. So like if it doesn't sound like that, it sounds totally foreign to me. Brian, you got a favorite line? Did you find one?
It was just below what you read. Shoot, where'd it go? Sorry, I'm on a PDF, so it makes it fun to try to get back to the page you were at. Oh, sorry. Um, just below that. Furthermore, paper and glass are fragile, while the board is a piece of stone, perhaps brittle, but redoubtably hard. Its layers of primeval mud, earliest sand, and volcanic dust compressed by the weight of mountains for a million years, whereas the chalk, like it an element of earth, is almost talc soft, lime-like, and sedimentary made. I prefer to think of the minute remains of marine animals, and it goes on and on and on. But I like that discussion of the different densities.
I like the toss away line about like what happens to the blackboards when they replace them. It's like I've
Yeah,
never really thought about that. But
yeah, where
like,
do they go?
but
what
it's interesting
happens?
because what it reminds me of, there's this story in the New Testament where Pharisees want to like stone some lady for prostitution or something, and Jesus sits down and he begins to write, and he's writing in the sand, and we don't know what he writes, but
Mhm.
scholars think it might have been the sins of people. And it's this idea of like before laws were like etched into stone, and now you have somebody that's kind of like writing it in soft sand,
Mm.
and the impact that it had on people. And it makes me think of like this talc that can just break away and turn to dust, but that can be forever. It's
Huh.
really fun to think about it like that way.
As someone who has a legit blackboard in their classroom, it's very funny the part about erasing stuff because I'm like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
I've noticed like several times like what type of eraser
Yeah,
people are and what they leave behind. One
yeah.
time, like not that long ago, I went into my class I teach today on Wednesday when we're recording, and there was a whole thing of Jungian psychology, like a whole schema written out and was just on multiple of the blackboards, which I then promptly erased. But that
yeah.
doesn't really tie this all together, you know. I I guess we can wrap there. For next week, we'll be reading the next section, which is the first winter of my married life. But that's going to be uplifting. I'm pretty sure that that first winter was cozy and romantic and filled with sweet nothings. But we'll see. You know, never know.
It is
But
for their neighbors.
yeah, so yeah, so you can find us on you or yeah, we do post this on YouTube, but mostly listen to the podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, rate and review, do all that fun stuff. Also subscribe to the Substack, which is 3%problem.substack.com, which has both these podcasts, this podcast, other posts, other excerpts, various fun stuff like that. So till next week, I don't know, I think maybe I'll go
check,
write a poem about smartboards.
check out Leaf X Leaf. I've heard it's pretty good.